Well, everybody, how are you doing today on this day after Election Day, where we still, at the recording of this video, do not know who is President of the United States, and we also do not know where my makeup and wardrobe is because, well, everybody, we missed our flight to the East Coast, so we had a few extra hours. I figured I'd record this video, which I have been wanting to record for a while, but that means that I'm wearing a hooded sweatshirt, no makeup, and pigtails. So this is my post-election look. I hope you like it. We're just going to focus on the information, and we're not going to care about these superficial things, are we? Because none of us got any sleep last night because we're all biting our nails over this election. But really, I think this is a topic worth discussing, regardless of who ends up winning. And again, it's something that I wanted to talk about back when the Senate hearing occurred, but just ran out of time. So here we are. We're talking about whether the social media companies or Google, big tech, affects elections. One of the things that was not talked about a ton with the Senate hearing that occurred recently is what Jack Dorsey specifically said about how Twitter, he says, does not influence elections. It's interesting because we're going to talk about what they did with these election results and how they're flagging content and who they decided were going to be their experts and how they're going to handle people calling races early, all that good stuff. But at the same time, Jack Dorsey saying that they don't influence elections. So I'm going to let you be the judge on the truth or falsity of all that and what you think. And maybe you think that a presidential election is important enough that on that particular night, they got to jump in. I tend to be somebody who says I don't want Twitter and Facebook and Google jumping in ever, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So before we get started, as always, there are links for how you can support my work in the description. There's Patreon, there's PayPal. It also just really helps if you like, share, comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed. I do hear sometimes that people are unsubscribed. I don't know if that's really happening, but just double check and make sure that you're subscribed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to listen to an exchange during that Senate hearing where Jack Dorsey explains their misinformation policy.
And we don't have a policy against misinformation. We have a policy against misinformation in three categories, which are manipulated media, public health, specifically COVID, and civic integrity, election interference, and voter suppression. That is all we have policy on for misleading information. We do not have policy or enforcement for any other types of misleading information that you're mentioning.
All right, so you hear him say that their misinformation policy is specific to those subcategories, one of which is related to election interference or civic engagement, voter suppression. So then this is just kind of odd when asked about whether Twitter influences elections. This is what he has to say.
Does Twitter have the ability to influence elections?
No.
You don't believe Twitter has any ability to influence elections?
No, we are one part of a broad spectrum of communication channels that people have.
So you're testifying to this committee right now that Twitter, when it silences people, when it censors people, when it blocks political speech, that has no impact on elections?
People have choice of other communication channels with which...
Not if they don't hear information. If you don't think you have the power to influence elections, why do you block anything?
Well, we have policies that are focused on making sure that more voices on the platform are possible. We see a lot of abuse and harassment, which ends up silencing people and having them leave from the platform.
And again, he's pressed on that point a second time, and this is what he says that time.
Mr. Dorsey, do you still deny that you don't have the ability to influence and interfere in our elections?
My answer was around people's choice around other communication channels.
No, your answer was, the question was, does Twitter have the ability to influence the elections? And you said no. Do you still stand by that answer?
Twitter as a company, no. No,
you don't think you have the ability by moderation policies, by as Senator Lee would, and I would call it censoring, what you do with the New York Post. You don't think that censorship, that moderation and policies, you don't think that influences the elections by withholding what I believe is true information from the American public? You don't think that interferes in elections?
Not our current moderation policies. Our current moderation policies are to protect the conversation and the integrity of the conversation around the elections.
So they don't influence elections, but at the same time, they take an inordinate amount of precautions, according to their own tweets, and we're going to look at this article in Axios, to ensure what exactly? Like, what is the point of flagging content and censoring people essentially if you are not worried about the effect that those will have on the election. I'm just confused. Maybe somebody can explain it to me in the comment section. Jack, if you're listening, please comment and let me know what's going on. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you mean. But let's go to the Twitter names 7 outlets to call election results article here in Axios. It reads, Twitter on Monday provided more details about its policies around tweets to declare election results, and it named the 7 outlets it will lean on to help it determine whether a race is officially called. The list includes ABC News, AP, CNN, CBS News, Decision Desk HQ, Fox News, and NBC News, all outlets that experts agree have verified unbiased decision desks calling elections. Interesting, just experts. Not really sure where those experts are or who they are, but Twitter and Axios are going to call them experts. So, in this thread here, it says Twitter support. That's who this is coming from. A few weeks ago, we announced how we will handle tweets about U.S. election results. We want to remind you what to expect and share a preview of the labels we may apply. We may label tweets starting on election night that make claims about election results before they're officially called. We'll be prioritizing the presidential election and other highly contested races where there may be significant issues with misleading information. Tweets are eligible to be labeled if the account has a U.S. 2020 candidate label, including presidential candidates and campaigns. The account is U.S. based with more than 100K followers, or they have significant engagement, 25K likes, or 25K quote tweets and retweets. We'll consider a result official when announced by a state election official or when calls are made by at least 2 of the below national news outlets that have dedicated independent election decision desks: ABC, AP, CBS News, CNN, Decision Desk HQ, Fox News, NBC News. When people attempt to retweet a tweet with misleading information label, they'll see a prompt pointing them to credible information before they are able to amplify it further on Twitter. If we see content inciting interference with the election, encouraging violent action, or other physical harms, we may take additional measures, such as adding a warning or requiring the removal of tweets. So there you have it. That's Twitter's policy, and I have been seeing that at work. Maybe you have as well, as you've been on Twitter looking for election results. Take a look at this tweet. This is from David Pakman. He's a liberal commentator, and he called the race for Wisconsin on Twitter, and Twitter flagged his post. I do, however, want to say that the criticism of this from both people on the left and the right, because this is a bipartisan concern. It really is. And the more I research this and the more I listen to people on YouTube, for instance, about this, I hear people on both the left and the right complaining about where this leads us, because what is often said is that censorship favors the establishment, or censorship favors the powerful. And as you see, and I'm not going to debate whether CBS or Fox News or whatever else. I'm going to let you debate in the comment section. Do you think those should be the experts? But those are obviously mainstream news outlets. So when you have somebody who's questioning the mainstream and questioning these outlets, whether they get things right, whether they're biased or not, whether they have particular preferences for who ends up president, and yet they're then cited as Twitter as the experts with unbiased desks, I don't know. I think there are some people that would criticize whether or not that is valid. That said, listen to Amy Klobuchar talk about this from really questioning whether this is not something that often, even though it's talked about as a Republican issue, is really something that both sides have people on that are concerned about.
I believe we're politicizing, and the Republican majority is politicizing, which should actually not be a partisan topic.
And I think she makes a fair point. I think there are people who are part of the establishment in both parties that are less concerned about this kind of work with these social media platforms, but there are people that would be considered sort of outliers and skeptics of their own party and skeptics of the sort of power structure in the media and in social media particularly. So both the corporate side and the news organizations, and then also the corporate side for the social media platforms, for the search engines, that would be equally concerned that their material is considered non-verified and flagged by these companies that have a lot of power and sort of run in the same circles as the establishment news organizations, that they're now together calling each other the experts, and the outliers who in some cases are more right about issues that are very sensitive that we're dealing with, but are looked at as potentially misinformation. So what do you think? Do you think that election night is an important enough night that we should have the big tech companies jump in and flag content? Or do you think that is essentially influencing elections? Do you believe Jack Dorsey when he says that they don't influence elections? And Curious, do you think that this is really a partisan issue, or do you think it's often discussed that way, but in fact, there are people on all sides of the aisle who are concerned? What do you think? Leave me a comment, let me know. Like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to leave me a comment and your feedback, and there are links, once again, for how you can support my work in the description. I got to go catch a flight. Maybe by the time I land, we'll know who's president. Probably not. I know it won't be me, though. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye.